What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Summer Cup using a viewer recommended team with all 3 clone starter Pokemon, which I built specifically for this video. I also thought this would be a great opportunity to take a look at the buffed Ember on Charizard, so I used an Elite Fast TM, but spoiler alert, it just straight up was not very good. I think the main issue isn't really with Charizard, but this team as a whole is not very flexible. All 3 Pokemon have really bad matchups that even when you're up shields, you just cannot flip. So if you don't get the right alignment, it is pretty rough trying to fight back from a bad lead. On the other hand, with Dragon Breath Charizard, suddenly you've got a lot more play into other Fire-type Pokemon, and you can even apply some pressure into Water-type Pokemon where Ember just has no chance. So with that in mind, and after just a single set with Ember, I used a second Elite Fast TM to get Dragon Breath and instantly saw some improvements. On the other hand, I did end up losing to a Shadow Scizor in the end game with my Charizard, so there's definitely still matchups where Ember is going to be way better, but for this team specifically, I think Dragon Breath was necessary. Now, before we get into the question of the day, I want to once again bring up today's video sponsor, G Fuel. G Fuel is an energy drink aimed specifically towards gamers, and is designed to help improve your energy levels, focus, endurance, and reaction time, which can certainly make the difference between a narrow loss and a narrow win in the Go Battle League. Right now, G Fuel has a buy one get one free sale on selected items, so if you've never tried G Fuel, now is definitely the best time, as you can get 2 flavors for the price of 1. Not to mention the Vault Challenge, which I talked about a few videos back, is still active, so with every energy tub purchase, you'll get an entry to the Vault Challenge, which could end up winning both you and me some very nice prizes. To find out more about that, visit a link in the description and in the pinned comment of this video, or scan the QR code on the screen right now, and remember, you can also get a free entry simply by entering the creator code Callum when signing up. Now with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Which Pokemon do you think is simultaneously the most annoying Pokemon to play against, but also the most annoying Pokemon to use yourself? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's finally get into the battles now. Alright, so heading into the first battle, leading Venusaur into a Kingdra. So Kingdra is kind of what sparked the question of the day idea for me, because I just feel like this Pokemon, every time it gets an Octazooka debuff, it's so frustrating, but then when you're using it and you don't get that debuff, that move is just so useless without the debuff. It's just super frustrating on both ends. The opponent does end up getting the debuff there, but Venusaur's still going to hit fairly hard in this matchup, so we fire off the Frenzy Plant, and if they commit to a farm down, we can reach yet another Frenzy Plant, so we'll actually win the one-shield scenario despite the debuff, so the opponent does end up shielding. We're going to come in with the Blastoise here, and at this point, Blastoise is the bulkiest on this team. I'm going to no-shield anyways, and they end up baiting again. This time, they do not get the debuff, but I'm going to no-shield again. This is not enough energy for the outrage, so they do bait. This time, unfortunately, they do get the debuff once again, but we can swap into our Charizard, and this is where Ember just isn't that great for me. They do have a Skeledirge in the back, and whilst, yes, we're both hitting full resisted damage, Incinerate is just such a better move than Ember. I recognize here they're going to have to throw when they get to 100 energy, so I fire off the Blast Burn just before that. At this point, we got an important call here, and unfortunately, I call it wrong. They go for that Shadow Ball. It gets the one-shot, and just to make things worse, we do get one turn. Bring in lag there, and that is actually going to be impactful for this battle. As the opponent comes back in with Virizion, we can go for the Skull Bash, but of course, if I got that one extra rollout through, the opponent, whilst they have the energy here, we could just go for a Skull Bash, but unfortunately, we don't have the energy anymore. So the opponent able to take me out with a Sacred Sword, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. Now, actually, I don't know if Blastoise wins or loses CMP up against Virizion. I have not used Blastoise before today, so yeah, genuinely don't know. But anyways, into the next battle, GG's to that trainer, by the way. We're going to see Sludge Bomb connecting into Virizion. And by the way, I'm only going to showcase maybe 3 or 4 battles with Ember Charizard before we do flip it over to Dragon Breath. But at this point, the opponent is not farming up to a Stone Edge. I can definitely just no-shield here. They go for Leaf Blade. That's double resisted. I'm now going to farm up to back-to-back Frenzy Plants here. And from this range, of course, resisted damage, Frenzy Plant will get the KO. They're going to come in with Skeledirge, but because I don't have Dragon Breath, I'm kind of forced to come in with my Blastoise here. So we are going to go for Skull Bash straight away. Skull Bash is going to be shielded by the Shadow for Alligator. And at this point, the opponent, they might be on Crunch. I feel like it is quite unlikely, but I'm going to shield anyways, and it is just a Hydro Cannon. So at this point, this is also going to be another Hydro Cannon, I assume, and it is. So we do resist that, of course. Also, I've boosted up my defense. I'm going to go for another Skull Bash here. Skull Bash does big damage. It doesn't quite get the KO. However, we can now just no-shield this. The opponent is going to full send that Shadow Ball, but I think I've put them into range where Charizard can at least reach 2 Dragon Claws, and we do, of course, have a Frenzy Plant loaded on the Venusaur. So I fire off the Dragon Claw there. The opponent is going to continue to overfarm, throwing just before I reach the next Dragon Claw, but unless the opponent makes a really nice catch onto their Feraligatr, I should be looking good here. We're going to fire off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to be no-shielded. I'm waiting for the opponent to throw their energy, and then at this point, of course, Shadow Ball will be enough damage to take out the Charizard, but they do not make the catch there. Honestly, I probably should have waited just to see if the Incinerate came through, but it doesn't matter. Frenzy Plant, when it does connect, takes them out there, and one more Vine Whip up against the Feraligatr when it does eventually come back in. Obviously, this opponent has just Rage Quit out of the app there, but we're able to take out the Feraligatr, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG stop on there into the next battle, and even though we did get the win there, Ember still was kind of holding us back there up against the Skeledirge. But anyways, into the next battle, and again, we're kind of forced to swap into our Blastoise because Charizard does have a losing matchup up against the Skeledirge. So, we come in, we get hard-walled by the Virizion, but they do shield the first move here, so I'm actually happy to take a shield advantage, and as well, I'm just going to force them to throw their next move here, committing once again to a Skull Bash. What I don't want to do is settle for a Hydro Cannon. Of course, that is resisted damage, and then allow the opponent to potentially go for an incredibly aggressive farm down. So we come back in with the Venusaur. They go for the resistant charge move there. I'm going to go straight for Sludge Bomb, and then at this point, I'm probably just going to commit to a full Vine Whip farm down. I recognize Venusaur doesn't have much play into that Skeledirge, so I don't really need to save much health on it, but I can get a monstrous farm down coming out with very close to back-to-back charge moves. So the opponent fires off the Sacred Sword there. We get the farm down. I can go for 2 Vine Whips, fire off that Frenzy Plant, and then go for 1 more Vine Whip before swapping into my Charizard. So Frenzy Plant does about 35% of their HP there, but unfortunately, again, Ember just holding back the Charizard. If I had Dragon Breath here, honestly, with a shield advantage, potentially I can flip this matchup here and get the full farm down. But unfortunately, Dragon Claw, whilst yes, I can still commit both shields here, it's not the best situation for me because it doesn't really put them into range where I could have got the farm down there after landing a single Dragon Claw. I can farm up to back-to-back, but the opponent is correctly just going to no-shield that. I expected the opponent to go for an extra Incinerate there, but unfortunately, they full send the Shadow Ball straight away. There's no point throwing. Frenzy Plant from that range would not get the KO. They can Incinerate, farm me down, and they still had a shield anyways, and so unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG to opponent there. Now we are running Dragon Breath, and instantly we are going to see why this is so much better for the Charizard. We say swap into it. The opponent probably just expecting Talonflame, looking at that typing, wanting to be quick with that swap. They come in with a Kingdra, and the opponent does not get the debuff there, which means this is a winning matchup for the Charizard, as we can fire off another Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw gets the KO there, and let's see what the opponent wants to do. They come back in with the Skeledirge, but Charizard is not done just yet. We can now fire off a Blast Burn. Blast Burn does big damage, and look at the work Charizard has just put in with Dragon Breath for the fast move. Of course, if I was running Ember and we swapped in and we saw that Kingdra, that would have been an awful matchup for me. But now we can come in with the Blastoise, farm up to the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is going to grab the final shield. They swap into Belly Bolt. There's no point swapping out straight away. I might as well go straight for a Hydro Cannon here before they can boost up the defense. And now we can come in with that Venusaur. Of course, I've still got a shield. It doesn't really matter. I don't need to shield anything. Frenzy Plant gets the KO there. The opponent just going to concede the match as there's nothing they can do, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG stop in there into the next battle. We're going to see Venusaur into a Tentacruel. So this is a fairly neutral matchup here for the Venusaur. We will outpace them to the first charge move. Frenzy Plant is not going to threaten the KO though, so unfortunately they do tank that Frenzy Plant a little bit more comfortably than I tank a Sludge Wave or potentially a Blizzard. I'm going to shield. It is the Sludge Wave there. I think I should be able to live that, but I don't want to put myself into farm down range because we don't have the best options in the back for this Pokemon. So I'm going to swap. I try to catch the move. They do end up throwing anyway, so that's fine with me. The opponent fires off the Sludge Wave there before swapping into a Belly Bolt. Now, this is good to bait it out here because, of course, Charizard is also going to struggle. Both my backline are going to be weak to the electric typing. The opponent is going to do a very good job there of over-farming, throwing just before we reach the next charge move. But Venusaur is still relatively healthy. I'm going to go for a Frenzy Plant. I could have gone for one extra Vine Whip, Whip, look to throw on CMP, but it doesn't matter as the opponent is still going to throw straight away. At this point, of course, Parabolic Charge does not get the KO, but I would give them free farm if I stayed in, so I swap into Charizard. They can outpace me before I reach a Blast Burn, and because they are boosted, Dragon Claw definitely would not get the KO. I'm now going to overfarm massively. The opponent swaps back into Tentacruel, but Dragon Breath able to get that farm down there, and that is huge for me. And also, the opponent is going to reveal their final Pokemon to be a Drampa, so Dragon Breath is absolutely coming in clutch right now. 2 Dragon Claws will get the KO. We farm up to a 3rd Dragon Claw as well, just so I've got energy when the Belly Bolt comes back in. I think I could have got the farm down here, but I'm not taking any risks. Dragon Claw does get the KO up against the Belly Bolt, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG top in there into next battle. We're going to see Venusaur into a Talonflame. So, once again, not a great matchup for the Venusaur. We're going to be safe swapping into Charizard, and they're actually going to stay in with that Talonflame. So, at this point, I'm firing off that Dragon Claw straight away. Dragon Claw does not grab a shield. It doesn't really do too much damage there, but it will eventually add up with the Dragon Breath damage here. The opponent is going to fire off the fly. I can just barely reach a 2nd Dragon Claw, throwing on CMP, winning CMP, and Dragon Claw is going to be shielded by the opponent. At this point, I'm expecting they must be weak to Charizard in the back, so I'm actually going to save the HP on my Charizard. I'm not going to reach a Blast Burn, unfortunately. That is the drawback of Dragon Breath. It is slower to get to charge moves, but the opponent does end up shielding anyways. So now I'm going to catch a Shadow Ball onto my Venusaur. I'm also able to get the Vine Whip through as I swap out there, which means the opponent can throw here, but this is just going to be a Seed Bomb, and Seed Bomb is double resisted. It does not get the KO, but likewise Sludge Bomb also not quite going to get the KO from that range, so the opponent can come back in with that Talonflame and go for the Incinerate Snipe. Now, I don't know if I can Dragon Breath farm them down from this range, so we come in with the Blastoise, and unfortunately, we don't even get that rollout farm down either. They do reach a fly before we can rollout farm them down. Now, they do have a double grass backline, so that is why I wanted to keep the Charizard alive, but this is going to be a little bit tricky. Skull Bash is going to do big damage. I'm now going to swap out the opponent, forced to throw a Sludge Bomb here, as if the opponent goes for a Frenzy Plant that's double resisted. They swap back into Trevenant, but we can now go for the rollout farm down. We come out with the Hydro Cannon loaded. This is resisted damage, but can it get the KO? No, and unfortunately, one more rollout still does not get the KO there, and as a result, Frenzy Plant takes out the clone Blastoise, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there, very well played. Into next battle, we're going to see Heliolisk, and they're going to safe swap into Belly Bolt. So it's very clear that ground types aren't that great in this meta. You have like Gashadon, Swampert, and not too many other ground types. Of course, Toedscruel does exist. Oh, sorry, Toedscruel does exist, but it is quite hard to get the XL candies for. I would know because I don't have the XL candies, and I want to showcase that Pokemon. But anyways, we get the KO there, and let's see what the opponent wants to do. They come back in with Heliolisk. I recognize they're on Mud Slap, so I actually swap into my Charizard, and we're met with a Talonflame. So here, I'm going to fire off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is not going to do too much damage. We've already seen this, but I will be able to outpace them to the next charge move here. I think I just double shield my Charizard potentially, but no, actually they Brave Bird there, so we can commit to a full Dragon Breath farm down. And the opponent recognizing there's not much they can do anymore. They have no fast move pressure, and so they're just going to concede the match. So, GG's to opponent there into next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Scizor in the lead. We're going to safe swap into Blastoise, and I'm met with a Tentacruel. So, up energy. This is actually slightly positive for us, just because I can boost up my defense before they do throw any charge attacks. At this point, I don't think I will be shielding here. So the opponent fires off the Sludge Wave. I'm now going to go straight for a Skull Bash. Skull Bash should be getting the KO, and if they come back in, actually no, it does not get the KO. Never mind, but that's actually slightly better for me, and the opponent cannot commit to that farm down. So I'm actually going to shield here just because I can guarantee a shield back with a Hydro Cannon, and we know Charizard not going to do that good up against a Shadow Scizor when 2 shields are still in place, since I'm not running Ember, and here that is a big mistake there. I just saw the rock typing and I instantly panicked and I swapped out. What I should have done is stayed in with my Charizard, apply a lot of Dragon Breath damage, and then eventually swap out before they do reach a potential rock side. I need energy on the Charizard, so I actually undercharge here. The opponent is going to basically give me no extra energy on my Charizard, however, as they're at 1 HP. So we get 1 extra Dragon Breath, and unfortunately, that's not really going to make a huge difference in this matchup. So we see Night Sash doesn't do too much damage. I am in the yellow health range, and what I don't want to do is put myself into range where they can farm me down. However, they end up getting the boost there, and they do outpace me anyways. So unfortunately, I think even if I did no shield that next move, the boost, they actually get a second boost there. Obviously, they get the unnecessary boost as it gets the KO. But anyways, yeah, I think unfortunately, I still would have lost that game, even if I no shielded the second move there, as Fury Cutters would have done more damage. But anyways, into the next battle, and once again, the opponent, expecting maybe a Talonflame, they swap into their Kingdra. Dragonclaw grabs the first shield from the opponent. And at this point, I'm also going to shield. The opponent going to go for that Octazooka, and Octazooka does not get the debuff once again. I wasn't sure if I could commit to a full farm down there. Potentially should have tried it, but either way, Dragonclaw gets the KO. And this Skeledirge is actually on Hex rather than Incinerate. So the opponent also not committing to the full farm down there. Potentially, I should have thrown a Dragonclaw, but I didn't want to throw on alignment and then allow them to fully farm me down. But anyways, we have got the alignment we want. However, this is, of course, a very neutral match, as it is a mirror matchup here with our Venusaur, but it doesn't really matter too much here. As long as I save a shield for my Blastoise, I should be looking fine. Sludge Bomb going to be coming through. Unfortunately, I think we won't quite live this here, so I'm going to no shield anyways. And Sludge Bomb actually doesn't quite take us out there, but I think one Vine Whip gets the KO, so I settle for the Frenzy Plant. And actually, it did not get the KO there, so I actually technically could have gone for a Sludge Bomb there, but it doesn't matter. Hydro Cannon is going to grab the final shield, but they make a brilliant sacrificial swap there, and on the CMP type as well, going for that Shadow Ball, dealing big damage. I'm going to go for an undercharge here. Like I mentioned, this is the first time I'm using Blastoise, so I wasn't quite sure how much damage that would do with that undercharge, but it doesn't matter in the end, as I'm able to reach yet another Hydro Cannon, getting the KO up against the Venusaur, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG top there into the next battle. We're going to see a Tentacruel in the lead once again. So, we're going to stay in this matchup initially here. The opponent is actually just going to go straight for a Skull. So, I'm going to no-shield this. This is resisted damage. And Skull does not get the debuff there, so that's fine with me. I'm now going to overfarm massively, farming up to back-to-back Frenzy Plants. First one, going to be no-shielded. A second Frenzy Plant should be getting the KO from this range. And then eventually, once again, I will be swapping into my Blastoise, looking to catch a Charge Move. Doesn't work out for me. And they come in with Virizion, so once again, getting completely hard-walled with my Blastoise here, but I can throw a Skull Bash. Skull Bash is going to do about 50% of their HP here, and the opponent is going to no-shield. So once again, I'm not going to go for that Hydro Cannon. Instead, force the opponent to throw some of their energy. And at this point, we're going to come back in with the Venusaur. If the opponent does throw straight away, then I know that they're not going to be on Stone Edge, as the opponent is going to throw here. The opponent is going to go for a Sacred Source, and now I can safely swap into my Charizard, but they've got a Belly Bolt in the back. Now, I do have to remember that Tentacruel left with a Scald loaded, so that's something I've got to be careful of. Belly Bolt is definitely going to grab both my remaining shields, so I should be wary of a potential snipe with that Tentacruel in the end game. So here, of course, we did bait with a Dragonclaw. Now I can full send a Blast Burn. Blast Burn is going to be no-shielded, but it doesn't quite get the KO here. And you can see my switch clock is up. I should be swapping, anticipating that swap there, but I just didn't do it. I thought maybe they'd go for one extra fast move first, and as a result, we're going to lose this game. I can at least get rid of the Tentacruel. However, that Virizion is still way too healthy. They can just double kick, farm me down, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG top there into the next battle. We can see a Pawmot in the lead. So this is a great lead for the Venusaur. They can only throw resisted charge moves. So we're going to stay in. They're going to spot into their own Venusaur. And we're still taking double resisted Vine Whip damage currently. So I'm going to fire off a Sludge Bomb. Now I'm going to swap into my Charizard. And I should have put them into range, but I can actually just settle for a Dragonclaw. The opponent fires off the Sludge Bomb there. And at this point, I'm going to overfarm. The opponent actually reaching another move here. I was thinking, did I miscount this? But no, it's just a Frenzy Plant, which is double resisted. And as a result, I get a full farm down. Now I'm going to throw pretty much straight away there. They come in with Typhlosion. So technically could have overfarmed ever so slightly. But I'm still going to come out with back-to-back charge moves as the opponent doesn't quite incinerate farm me down there. So Blast Burn does big damage. And once again, I'm just going to save my shields for the Venusaur this time around. So at this point, the opponent fires off that Thunder Punch. I expect them to swap out straight away. But just in case they didn't, I didn't want to swap there and then take incinerate damage on my Venusaur. So now I'm going to shield that up there. Obviously, just mentioned that I would save my shields for the Venusaur, but I ended up shielding the Blastoise. But either way, we should be looking fine. The opponent is, of course, going to farm up likely to back-to-back close combats. I'm going to no-shield the first one, and close combat is going to do big damage there, actually. But I can now just shield this next move. If they go for it again, which they do, I can now commit to a full Vine Whip farm down, but the opponent is able to swap out there, and unfortunately, we're in a bit of an awkward situation, but never mind, as we did have back-to-back Frenzy Plants, I can swap into my Blastoise. Thunder Punch does not get the KO, we get the farm down there, and even if they do have a move loaded, I've got moves on both my Blastoise and the Venusaur, and so I'm able to take that game. So, GG top in there is the next battle. We can see a Fortress in the lead. I'm going to say swap into my Blastoise, and we're met with a Belly Bolt. So once again, good to bait this out here, but unfortunately, this is not a great matchup. We can go for the Hydro Cannon. Of course, they're going to shield the first move here, but if I save both my shields for my Charizard, maybe we do have some play in the end game. But we're going to go for a Hydro Cannon here. I should be able to reach yet another Hydro Cannon before they can fully farm me down here. So that's what we're committing to. And then, of course, I should just let the Blastoise go down. There's definitely no point swapping into my Venusaur, as we will just be completely walled by the Fortress. So we come in with that Venusaur. I'm going to no-shield the first charge move here, as the opponent is going to go for a Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon does not debuff my attack. Potentially could have overfarmed ever so slightly more there, but it doesn't really matter. This energy is completely useless up against the Fortress. So I swap into Charizard. But unfortunately, they've got Credilli in the back. One of the worst things that Charizard can see. Even up shields here. Rock Tomb going to be debuffing my attack, meaning Blast Burn just not going to do that much damage. But I do need to full send it anyways if I want any chance of farming them down. So here, I'm going to shield up the next charge move. I'm going to look to try and commit to a Dragon Red farm down. You can see my switch clock is coming up very close to being able to swap out, but I think they were like milliseconds off of me being able to swap out and catch the move there, and unfortunately, I'm not able to do so. Rock Tomb double super effective, easily gets the one shot, and we end up losing that game. But GG's to that trainer into the next battle. The bad leads continue with Venusaur leading into Typhlosion. I'm safe swapping into Charizard, and this isn't the best matchup just because, of course, they do have access to Thunder Punch. But I'm going to shield the first charge move anyways, and the opponent trying to be smart there, trying to catch a Dragon Claw, but they can't catch with Incinerate because I'm just not going to throw on alignment. So, as a result, we can actually reach 2 Blast Burns here before the opponent does end up throwing any energy. And Blast Burn number 2 gets the one shot. And now we can actually swap out there, save the health on our Charizard if they've got like a backline, which is double grass. We can now go for the Hydro Cannon here. They are still switch locked most likely. The opponent now can finally swap out, and they come in with the Venusaur. So at this point, I'm going to let the Blastoise go down, of course. Frenzy Plant will be getting the KO. I can come in with my Charizard initially and then look to catch a charge move onto my Venusaur. We just want to have a Dragon Claw banked. Now we swap into Venusaur, and the opponent is actually going for a Frenzy Plant bait there, which is double resisted on my own Venusaur. And at this point, I'm just going to continue to overfarm. Sludge Bomb, not going to get the KO here. It also won't even put me into Thunder Punch range either for that Typhlosion. So we hold on to the energy, but Frenzy Plant resisted damage, still gets the KO, and the opponent recognizing it's game over, and so they just concede the match. So, GG to opponent there into the next battle. You can see Belly Bolts in the lead, so we are happy to see it here. This actually isn't that comfortable of a matchup if the opponent does end up shooting the first move, but I don't really care too much. What I want is shields down, because Charizard is a lot better when we do have a shield advantage. But anyways, they are going to go for a Parabolic Charge straight away, boosting up the defense. I can still outpace them to the next move. I do wait one turn, just to make sure they don't make a catch onto one of their back Pokemon. Frenzy Plant is going to get them fairly low here. I can still no-shield this. The opponent going for Parabolic Charge once again, but either way, I can just barely reach yet another Frenzy Plant. So Frenzy Plant number 3 does get the KO. We win switch advantage, and we've got a shield advantage. They come in with Virizion. They swap into a Shadow Lapras. So now I'm going to overfarm. I'm swapping into Blastoise there, banking very close to a Blast Burn. They go for a Sparkling Aria, so clearly they're not on Skull Bash, which means this is a really comfortable matchup for the Blastoise. Of course, the Psywaves are still going to add up over time, but now I can farm up to very close to 100 energy, fire off the Skull Bash. Skull Bash is going to be no-shielded. It puts them into farm down range. But at this point, I expect the opponent is going to swap back into their Virizion straight away, and the opponent should be recognizing there's nothing they can do there, and so you can see we do get credited with the win, and so the opponent just concedes the match, and I'm able to take that game. But going into the final battle of this video, and this is actually a trainer we've already faced in this video, although they were running Skeletor's the previous time, so different team. I did not recognize that at the time. The opponent goes for a Sludge Bomb there, and unfortunately, whilst I have okay-ish IVs on this Venusaur, they're not the best, so actually, if we do end up reaching another Sludge Bomb here, this might not get the KO. However, their Sludge Bomb might end up taking me out there. So unfortunately, it barely does not get the KO. The opponent, Sludge Bomb, also does not take me out, but they just barely hang on there. So we're going to come in with the Blastoise, hoping that was their best answer. And now we're met with a Kingdra. I'm going straight for Skull Bash. It feels very pointless to bait with a Hydro Cannon. The opponent is going to end up shielding though, so maybe we could have done that. But either way, I feel like I'm in a comfortable position here. I expect they might end up baiting, so I no shield, but they full send the Outrage. And that is a mistake here because they overfarmed quite considerably. I don't even reach the Dragon Claw here. And Kingdra, being as annoying as it usually is, they get the debuff there. And as a result, I think I will be losing this game. I feel like every time I see Kingdra, either I win because they don't get the debuff, or I lose because they get the debuff, and there's just no in between. And that's why I do think it is the most annoying Pokemon, either to play against or even to play with. But either way, we're firing off another Dragon Claw here. I need to live another Hex on my Blastoise, as I'm very close to back-to-back charge moves here. But unfortunately, I'm not able to do so, and as a result, the opponent comes out with the Shadow Ball loaded. Shadow Ball takes out the Charizard, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way, you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.